insurance company of the state of Pennsylvania in default.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Let me make a comment on that.
Yes,
Actually, that's not the motion that staff's recommending. That was simply carried over from last meeting, because that was the item, and you granted a 2-week delay, tabled the item while the parties attempted to negotiate. And we have the attorney here for the city on that case, but my understanding is the negotiations have been somewhat successful. They are moving forward. We'd actually like to ask you tonight to consider a substitute motion, which would extend to March 22nd, what's called the tolling period. If you remember, time to sue, we had it expired a couple of weeks back, and because we made that progress, and already Morganti and REG have signed that tolling agreement, and if you approve that, it would be extended to March 22nd, and then your agenda at that point will give you an update on where we are. Again, there has been a lot of progress. Frankly, our expert has been tied up in depositions and trial for the last week, and they've had a hard time getting with the other side's experts, so they have proposed some solutions that look as if they may bear fruit. We don't know until, obviously, there's a meeting that we're trying to get together on Friday. So we'd ask you, instead of the motion that you made, if you consider a motion that simply extends the tolling agreement until March 22nd.
Did you want to revise your motion?
I'll revise my motion if I can ask a few questions.
Go for it.
I'll pull it. I pull my motion back.
Second. Your second, okay. Okay, go ahead.
Sure.
Excellent.
I'd like to hear from Morganti and REG. I have a couple of pointed questions I need to get off my chest.
This is Mr. Hawks. He represents REG. With him is Mr. Gonzalez, Mr. Price, and Mr.
Is he the lawyer for REG?
Yes, sir.
Well, I don't think you can ask the questions I'm going to ask.
Rick Gonzalez certainly can answer the question.
And Morganti, are they here?
Yes, sir.
Jerry Kelly is here for.
Okay.
And the gentleman at the podium is...
Do you want to both sit maybe at that front row so you can share that microphone?
Yeah,
This way.
I'm happy. I understand you're asking questions. I'm happy to fill in the progress we've made because I understand your frustration.
Okay.
You know, this project has been talked about and bantered about, began some 6, 7, 8 years ago. And when the project was finally approved to move forward and the design and the construction and all that went with that, there was a certain time period that took place. It seems to me that the deficiencies that have come up as a result of that planning and that design and that construction were identified straight up, right out of the gates. And the time that has lapsed between the time that building was, those deficiencies were discovered, and today greatly exceeds the amount of time it took to design the building and to build the building. And I would just really like to know how 2 professional companies could hang like we're without for 3 or 4 years, however long it's been, and not been able to resolve these issues. And all the while, we've not been able to rent that space upstairs. And all the while, we've got all kinds of issues with tenants, maintenance issues, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I would like a real good explanation as to why we should not move forward and move for legal action against both of you.
You want me to answer that?
No, I'd like to hear from both companies.
I'll start. Is this on?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, so the project was awarded in 2010, almost 6 years ago, April. After a very long and intensive design competition. I'm not sure if you were on the board. I don't think anybody.
I was here.
You were the only one. I think you joined later on, and everybody else, including the city manager. William was working for our firm, so he now works for the city. So a lot of people are not here that used to be here back then. The design competition, we were successful at winning that design competition because we simply said, you have a rough jewel here. I mean, I have pictures of what that building used to look like. I hope you still remember what that building used to look like. It was horrible. And we said the best solution for this project, and over 200 people agreed in the several design charrettes that we had. William and I ran those design charrettes in the summer of 2010. And everybody was in the feeling that the best solution would be to try to bring back the essence of the historical casino and then treat the wing that was added later on as a sister or as a cousin. So therefore, the 2 different or similar designs but slightly different designs that were done. So it was very successful startup of the project. The project budget, we came back with, I think it was $9 million right there. I think it was including all the pieces along the side that were being eaten or removed. We ended up really with an $8 million project that was done for $6 million. We ended up adding features such as ADA accessibility above and beyond code requirements that were to satisfy the commission and the mayor at the time. An impossibility, thinking now in retrospect that what we had on this location was a very unique building. I've been doing this, Mr. Maxwell, for 30 years. I'm a professional, I'm an expert in historic preservation in the state of Florida. I'm on the historical commission. I'm the past president of the Florida Trust. I take my work very serious, and I've worked with Jerry for a very, very long time too. In fact, we go to the same church, so I've known him for a very long time. The building is like a ship. It is on a location on the ridgeline that is very volatile with the environment. The amount of rain, I mean, the summer storms now with global warming, the storms that we get just about any time. You know, and with the ADA issues, yes, there have been issues with the thresholds, with the doors. The door vendor was a Lake Worth vendor. We worked with the door installer was a subcontractor that worked with Morganti. We have spent hundreds of hours trying to get them to show up and come up with repairs. We finally got there to do that. The building was substantially completed in May or the summer of 2012, and the grand opening was January of 2013, which was 3 years ago, so you're right. It took 3 years to design, permit, build it, and it's taken 3 years now to resolve the problems. And not from a lack of trying, we have been trying diligently, looking at different options. It's a balance of not only repair work, but of maintenance work on the property too. Its exposure to sand, to water, to salt is such that it's going to require a lot more oversight and maintenance on the long run. We've come up with some excellent solutions for the decking to make sure that it drains properly. That, together with the repair work on the storefront, should solve those problems. Those are the two major problems on the building. There are some minor problems like trellises that needed screws and stucco, a little bit of efflorescence, which happens on every building. You go to the courthouse downtown that we live in, there's efflorescence there. In fact, the awnings have fallen apart now, and they need to replace the awnings 8 years later. So maintenance is always required. Maintenance on a very harsh environment, harsh location, is going to take even more of a requirement. Let's see what else. Did I miss anything? Those are the major features. In October, we proposed a good solution. The expert has not been as available for your attorney. We've been waiting to hopefully get his attention to this matter. Believe me, we would have loved to have solved this a very long time ago. I have 3 major projects in Lake Worth. This has gone on for too long. I've worked on the hotel. I've been working for the Lake Palm Beach County Cultural Council with their design, their work, and additional work, plus an annex that we hope to do in the next couple of years. And we're doing the flats for the housing units down the street over here next to the artist loft. So we're very involved and interested in working, continue to work on Lake Worth. And we want to refer Morganti to do more projects. So we hope that this is really the final chapter, that we can solve this problem, and we can go ahead, take our drawings, get your expert to approve them, whom we haven't had a chance to meet with him. He's been very busy expert, you know, trying to get him involved so that Morganti and Morganti's crews can go ahead and fix the storefront, fix the decking, and the stucco and the whatever other minor miscellaneous items have to be repaired.
Mayor?
Okay.
Well, it seems to me, you know, I do specifically remember asking you and Morganti Group more than one time what your experience level was with coastal construction. I was assured by both firms that you had extensive experience in coastal construction. And part of your comment here this evening was it's a harsh environment and that the building doesn't hold up as well in a harsh environment. Now, I'm not an engineer or an architect or a builder, but it seems to me that if you have experience in coastal construction, you're going to design a building that will withstand the harsh environment. And hardware that rusts within weeks of installation does not speak well. You know, you talked about V, which, by the way, folks, means value engineering. You know, I think you all know that I told you couldn't do that building for $6 million.
Yet the city manager at the time, not the current city manager, insisted. Look at the record, look at the minutes, $6 million, $6 million, $6 million, the whole distance of the project. Now, we've done a lot of waterfront projects. Jerry experimented at the airport down in Key West. In fact, that's the reason he was able, with the city commission, a difficult situation, and he got that done successfully. And we did Mar-a-Lago for Mr. Trump. Now, at Mar-a-Lago, we had overhangs, we had thresholds. We did not have to meet these requirements that the city commission at the time insisted upon. There was, I don't remember the name of the particular commissioner. There was one commissioner that was absolutely mandatory, saying that second floor deck had to be open, had to be completely ADA accessible, and we couldn't come in and add any canopies or anything that wasn't part of the original roof. Okay, and even bringing back the wood floors, which in retrospect might have been better to have done a man-made material that looked like wood instead of the wood floor, because of the amount of
And I appreciate that, but you still really haven't addressed the fact that it's taken 3 years to fix minor issues or issues that we have. And I just find that unconscionable that two professional companies such as yourselves
Well, there's four parties involved here. It's us, and also your staff, and your city attorney with his...
all the more reason why it should have been done expeditiously. So let's hear from Morganti.
I think we're real close here, Commissioner, and I think Mr. Kenny.
May I have your name for the record, please?
Jerry Kelly.
Thank you.
We're very close to getting the last solution. We've already proposed the door situation, and the last remaining item is the document deck, and that's what we're waiting on as far as the experts. And as soon as we can get together with them, I think we should be able to proceed and moving that.
Well, from my perspective, we lost revenue up there. It's put a strain on the financial plan that was originally designed for that building. It's caused political issues as a result of that strain. And quite frankly, I think that the city of Lake Worth has been handled very poorly, and it's been considered an afterthought in all this. I don't think that our best interests were ever at the forefront of what you all were doing here. And I honestly believe that, because if they were, these issues would have been resolved immediately after they were identified.
Mr. Maxwell, with all due respect, sir, the financial plan which William and I came up with, by the way, required that that second floor be part of the first floor. That there be a two-story restaurant with high-end dining on the upper floor, and day-to-day, like Johnny G's on the first floor. Those recommendations were ignored because at the time you had a tenant that just wanted the first floor, didn't want to deal with the second floor. So financial losses really have been because changing direction, because somebody decided to rent that first floor instead of renting a two-story space, which would have, Portside again, might have worked a little bit better in terms of the financial capabilities of the city.
Well, I think honestly, between the two of your companies, you've done the city of Lake Worth very, very well on this project. It's been 3 years, and it's the project, in my mind, and the deficiencies aspect of it have been an embarrassment. And that's all I have to say.
Commissioner Mark?
Thank you. If one question for the city manager first, and I'll come right back to you as city manager. So this project was completed in 2010. Roughly when did we? No.
2013. 12.
Completed in 13. Sorry. When roughly did we determine that there was a problem with the construction?
Well, before we opened the building, we were experiencing leaks, and we have volumes of documentation that go back. You wouldn't catch them in the dates. Michael Kennedy.
If I could, I would prefer we not get into the specifics of what we discovered when we discovered it and when it was brought to anyone's attention. For legal reasons, I'm not trying to cut you off, Commissioner. I want to
Sure.
hold it. There were issues, and I would say the deck issue became more relevant more recently when we began to examine the building more closely. We did some surveys about a year ago, and we found that the slope of the deck was not what we expected. We found it was holding water. That has been a real issue in the last, say, year or so. We do have a fix that's proposed. The proposal that has kind of hung a little bit has to do with the manufacture of a particular drain. I would call it an underdrain. It would sit underneath the tile. And we've been trying to determine the suitability.
Would you mind talking to the mic? It's hard to hear you.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
We've been trying, our consultant's been trying to determine the suitability. And I would say that in the last meeting, your direction to all of us, including going over to Morgana and to RG, was well understood. The problem we faced was trying to get through the manufacturer that drain information that we needed for our consultant so she could review it. We still don't have the precise stuff, but I did see an email that was sent to me subsequently that shows the distributor of that material wants to come out, see the installation, and will provide some information. She provided that email to Mr. Fox. I've seen that since the last meeting. They've given us additional information on slope, on the way the drain system would be constructed, and although our consultant was unavailable in the last 2 weeks, largely she's been in deposition. I sat myself with her in several days of deposition, where she was on the other side. I could not discuss this with her. So I've taken their questions by email, passed it on to REG and to Morganti, and there's been a flow of information. So I come before you to ask for 2 more weeks to try to get this done. We're going to try to get this done. Our consultant has the information. They've been trying to work diligently. I would say more recently you kicked them and you get it. I mean, you heard it from Mr. Last time you heard it. Now I think you see a showing that they're all here. So I've got their attention. I'm getting daily comments from each of them, which is helpful.
Can I finish?
Sure.
Since 2013, how many times has REG been hired by the city of Lake Worth or the Lake Worth CRA?
We have a lot of clients, Mr. Meyer. I wouldn't know exactly how many times. We have done some conceptual rendering work for the CRA at the 1000 Lake Avenue behind here. So that's one project.
Just something more recent. Do you happen to know the most recent project for which the CRA would have hired REG?
The housing project, but that's really with the nonprofit group, so.
Sure, there is some connection. I'm just, and maybe asking of all of the parties here, how do we get to this level on one issue while, on the other hand, we're still doing business with the same companies, recognizing at some point, maybe 2013, that there was an issue?
I understand the frustration. I can't answer that. I can only say what I know is going on right now. And I'm seeing positive movement, hopefully to close this. The alternative, I think, is not palatable to anybody. We can close this with an amicable resolution where everybody might be a little unhappy, but the overall project moves ahead. I think that's why I took it down. I know that doesn't answer your question, but
No, it doesn't. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Are you there? Commissioner Boyle?
I do field work in harsh environments, and Florida's pretty harsh anywhere. Right on the ocean is definitely harsh, so I certainly hear the challenges that you face there. I guess my only question is basically maybe a confirmation from both of you of what I'm hearing from our attorney, which is, and from you, that it sounds like on the technical aspects of the solution, you're noodling around, maybe a little, we'll use this glue or that glue or whatever, drill the holes this way, but you're basically positive about you'll either alter the slope or lower the viscosity of water that flows in from the ocean or something, and make this work so that there's a reasonable chance that we'll see not a completed solution, but the plans to implement it with a reasonably high likelihood that it'll work. You know, I understand it won't be 100% guaranteed, but it better be pretty high, and I think you understand that, both of you. So if I vote in favor of the March 22nd tolling, and I think we're here last week, Jerry, does that give you enough time? I don't want to be in this situation where we meet again, and I think we should take into account, none of us knew anything about the depositional duties of the person. Do we have any sense, is that person going to be in deposition in the next 2 weeks? And
no, we are tentatively looking at a meeting on Friday, but what I have done to kind of expedite the thing, I've just directly, I can't write to Mr. Kelly or Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Price. I've written to council.
Right.
And they have, I would say within a day, answered every question. There have been a string of emails back since our last meeting.
very responsive.
Very responsive, and I passed it on down to our engineer's assistant, who's been, and they had a meeting yesterday and they had a meeting the day before on it. So we're getting progress. And I would say the last 2 weeks, part of the problem is our consultant was just busy.
Right, that happens.
New problems, and, you know, we're in these cases where we have depositions 2 weeks a month, which really is outrageous, but that's what happened in her situation. Went 2 days in one and another day in a third.
So between all of you, is March 22nd a reasonable amount of time that you're pretty confident you'll come back?
I think we'll be at a point where we can give a decision. Whether it'll be wrapped up and bundled up, I can't say, but I would use the old trial lawyer adage, and that is nothing makes people get to the bargaining table other than a hard deadline or a trial date. So that's my take.
Yeah, on our side, we would like to, we'll just, again, if that person's available to respond, then he says the person is available, so hopefully that'll happen.
Okay.
Well, then I make a motion that we...
There's already a motion.
No, the motion was withdrawn, wasn't it?
No.
Yes.
No,
No,
we
you,
changed our motion to...
no, we just withdrew it, and you need to make a motion again, so.
So I make a motion that we adopt the suggestion from our legal counsel, which I believe is to extend the tolling agreement to March 22nd.
Yes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do we have any public comment cards?
Actually, we have one.
Winslow Hawks. You okay?
I will just say a few comments on what Mr. Kennedy had to say. We all have to go from where we are. We'd like not to be here. You would like not to be in this situation. We would like not to be in this situation. But we have to look at what's best for, we have to look what's best for Lake Worth. We have to look what's best for us. What's best for both of us, I think, fortunately, is to delay for another couple of weeks to the 22nd in order to give our proposals that we think will be satisfactory to the city and also provide the solutions that you want enough time to be commented on by the experts for the city. And in that way, we won't have wasted all the time we put into preparing those proposals, and the city won't get into a large situation. Mr. Kennedy and I both do litigation. It's a bad way to settle any problem. So if we can settle the problem this way, we're all better off. Those are the comments I make. If there are questions that I can answer, I would certainly be happy to do so.
I just have one question. I know you're not going to want to hear this.
Okay.
What happens if the solutions don't work?
Well, then you're right back where you were before. But at least you have tried to get to the best, you think, the best solution to these problems. Let me mention one point about leaking doors. The doors you have on the second floor are the same doors you have on the first floor. The problem is there isn't an overhang on the second level. There was a desire to have ADA doors and restricted slopes, and maybe we gave in to something that the city thought was valuable but is impossible. So now we have other solutions for those problems. As a matter of fact, I first became involved in this, unfortunately, in 2013, in about the fall. Rick Gonzalez, from that point on, has been urging his employees and me to try to find, with Lake Worth, a solution to these problems. So we want this to end too. We want you to have a solution that you're happy with, and we want this to be over. We think we're close to that, and that means giving us another couple of weeks in order to meet with the expert and to see if the expert agrees with our solutions. The alternative to doing what we're suggesting Lake Worth do is very undesirable. You're stuck then in a lawsuit which is expensive and takes forever. So my 2 cents worth is go with this suggestion. I realize you lost your patience and you don't want to, but sometimes you just have to, give in to what's best and give it a try. And I think that this is the way to go.
Okay, thank you very much.
Questions?
We've got it's public, it's a question card, so I'm gonna call the other question. Peggy Fisher?
Peggy Fisher, 508 North 8th Street. I haven't heard anything talked about in talking about the problems. I've seen pictures of water cascading downstairs during rainstorms. I know we're talking about the drainage off the balcony, but I'd like to hear some confirmation that that's one of the items being resolved. And as far as the use of REG, if the CRA hires REG, it has nothing to do with the city employees. The CRA is their own entity.
Thank you. Do you want to answer that? Yes, please.
You want me to?
Okay.
That's part of the problem. The problem is the slope of the deck. In some cases, it does not slope away. It needs to slope to drains and there's the scuppers. And the intent, as I understand it, and please excuse me, I'm just a lawyer, that this under drain would move it to the scuppers and move it off the appropriate way. And some of the concerns that this lady addressed are concerns we've raised because there's efflorescent. That's that little crystalline white material you see indicating that there's been water going down there. We've raised that. They understand that issue.
All right, we've got a motion on the floor and a second. Oh, sorry.
I just,
Commissioner McWay?
I just wanted a little technical clarification that I'm guessing, but I don't know, I'm guessing that part of the issue is that you had two competing design objectives on the deck. One is people in wheelchairs don't like to be rolling along the side of a mountain with one side a lot higher than the other. And the other is to get a drainage, you want exactly that. Mountains drain pretty well. In your solution, those two objectives still are out there. How do you propose to, are we going to relax one of them? You don't want to relax the slope one for the water because you still need to get that water off.
It's a combination of the work on the storefront, the ones that are not ADA accessible. The ones that are ADA accessible are under cover. So by keeping those ADA accessible, they're underneath the overhangs or
Right.
where the kitchenette is on the south side or where the bathrooms are on the west side, so they're undercover. Those will be your ADA access.
Right.
The other ones will be, some of them will be sealed permanently, some of them will have a non-ADA threshold, and then that's going to help them with the new sloping, corrective sloping for the deck portions that are not corrected.
So we will increase the slope.
With a thin set and the tile, and then underneath that there's a sponge, the system that collects the water and runs it to the edge, depending on the over the scuppers.
Right.
But the scuppers, and again, and I need to say this again, at the end of the day, when
I was just going to say, if it plugs up.
be cleaned up, you
Yeah.
have to have someone with a hose power washing that deck, I don't know, once a week or, so you don't get everything, all that sand kind of just sitting there,
Yeah.
clogging everything, which is a lot of that sand.
Yeah, no, that's just what I was going to
It's a
say.
beautiful building, it just seems to be,
It's a high maintenance building.
it's a high,
It's a high maintenance site.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
We've got a motion on the floor and a second. My comments would just be the timetable that it's taken is not acceptable. I don't want to move past. I don't want to